Have you ever felt that the moment you started seeking higher consciousness, your fire, your hunger, your raw drive to achieve simply vanished? You chase enlightenment, yet somehow, life's ambitions seem to slip further away. Today, I'm going to reveal the hidden reason why spiritual awakening can kill your motivation and how you can reclaim the power that even enlightenment cannot destroy. When a person first awakens spiritually, they often describe a sense of calm, a dissolution of inner chaos, and a gentle quieting of the mind. It feels as if the storms that once raged inside have finally settled. For the first time in years, perhaps in their entire life, they feel a profound sense of enough. And at first, this feels like victory. But listen closely, because here is where the silent trap is set. That feeling of contentment, that inner stillness, begins to replace the fire that once drove them to rise, to fight, to seek more than what they currently possess. They begin to believe that because they feel at peace, they have arrived at some grand completion. But peace does not equal victory, and contentment does not mean one has conquered life. It simply means one has surrendered to a temporary comfort. Niccolò observed kings, merchants, scholars, soldiers, and peasants. And I learned that every man is moved by desire. It is desire that sparks action. It is hunger that roasts ambition. It is dissatisfaction that pushes the human mind to break limits, to innovate, to build empires, to create legacies. When one becomes entirely content, he loses the very spark that fuels his rise. The man who feels he already has everything ceases to strive. And when striving stops, growth stops. When growth stops, the world moves forward without you. And soon, you find yourself replaced by another who still carries hunger in his chest. This is why so many individuals, after awakening spiritually, suddenly discover that their goals feel meaningless, their dreams feel distant. The career or craft they once fought for now seems unimportant. They begin to say things like, "None of this matters." And it is true, in the realm of the eternal, nothing holds meaning. But you do not live in the realm of the eternal. You live in the world of men. You live among people who build, compete, create, and shape reality with their will. If you stop engaging with the world does not applaud you. The world simply moves forward and forgets your name. Spiritual awakening brings a profound realization that happiness cannot be bought, that external achievements do not guarantee fulfillment, that chasing endless desires leads to suffering. This realization is powerful, yes, but many misunderstand its purpose. It is not meant to extinguish ambition. It is meant to refine it. The goal is not to erase hunger, but to direct it with clarity and purpose. Yet most, in the shock of seeing the emptiness of material pursuit, choose to abandon pursuit altogether. They sit in stillness. They detach. They drift, and slowly, without noticing, their life loses momentum. Contentment is the sweetest poison. It tastes pure. It feels gentle. It arrives without violence. But it sedates the spirit. It lulls the mind into a warm and quiet sleep. And once asleep, one forgets that life is a battlefield. Power must be maintained. Influence must be cultivated, skills must be sharpened, and identity must be shaped again and again. Without this continual struggle, one does not ascend, one dissolves. The man who declares himself beyond ambition becomes prey to those who still possess it. The world is not ruled by the calm. The world is ruled by the driven. The peaceful may experience serenity, but they will never shape their destiny. If you withdraw from striving, you do not attain enlightenment. You simply step aside while another takes what could have been yours. This is why the illusion of contentment is so dangerous. You believe you have become wise. You believe you have transcended desire. But in truth, you have merely numbed your own fire. And without fire, a man is just a whisper in the wind. The sages who achieved true mastery did not abandon the world. They understood it deeper than others. They did not lose ambition. They aligned it. They did not kill desire. They disciplined it. They did not reject the world. They learned how to move through it while being untouched by its illusions. The tragedy is that most who awaken spiritually stop halfway. They feel peace and assume the journey is over. But peace is only stage one. Stage two is the return. The moment where you step back into the world, carrying your awareness as a weapon, not as a pillow. Spiritual awakening is not meant to make you passive. It is meant to make you precise. It is not meant to kill your hunger. It is meant to help you understand what is truly worth hungering for. Without reclaiming your desire, your power dissolves. And without power, you cannot shape destiny. And without shaping destiny, your awakening serves no purpose at all. Detachment is a word that sounds noble, pure, and enlightened. It is praised in scripture, philosophies, and teachings from every culture. The wise man, we are told, is untouched by the noise of desire, unshaken by the storms of emotion, and free from the chains of worldly attachment. But like all noble ideals, when misunderstood, turns into a quiet poison. And many who seek awakening fall into this poison without even realizing it. They become detached, yes, but not in the way of a disciplined master. They become detached like a man who has lost the will to participate in life. In the beginning, detachment feels liberating. You look at the world, the competition, the greed, the hustle, and you think, I do not need any of this. You watch others chasing status, validation, and recognition, and you feel as if you have risen above them. You feel elevated, enlightened, superior. But this is not wisdom. This is escape. This is the ego disguising itself as enlightenment. A cruel trick of the mind, the ego secretly saying, you are too pure for the world, when in reality, it has simply grown afraid to compete. True detachment does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means not being owned by it. But most, instead of mastering their desires, choose to destroy them entirely. They go from being a participant in life to being a spectator. They observe rather than act. They accept rather than shape. They float rather than command. And slowly, they watch their influence fade. Their presence becomes light, almost transparent. They begin to feel like a ghost who walks among the living, but no longer touches anything. I witnessed rulers lose kingdoms this way. The moment they detached themselves from the affairs of the state, believing the throne was secure and their power unshackable, schemers rose from the shadows. The throne never remains empty. When one man steps away, another steps forward. The same is true within the inner world of a human being. When ambition steps back, complacency steps forward. When purpose stops speaking, silence does not bring clarity. It brings decay. Detachment is easily mistaken for wisdom because it has no immediate consequences. When you detach, life continues. The days still pass. You still eat, sleep, breathe, exist. But what changes is your energy. The flame that once drove you begins to dim. You no longer fight for anything. You no longer hunger for anything. You simply drift. And drifting is the slowest form of death. Many believe that letting go is the same as rising above, but letting go without direction is simply falling. A man who releases all desire becomes neutral, and neutrality is not power. It is the absence of power. Power requires direction, action, intention, force. The universe responds to will, not emptiness. Consider the warrior. If he becomes detached from fear, he becomes fearless. This is strength. But if he becomes detached from purpose, he will not draw his sword. This is surrender. The problem is not detachment itself. The problem is detachment without clarity, without knowing what should remain, without understanding what deserves your commitment. Detachment in its corrupted form convinces you that caring is weakness. But caring is not weakness. Caring is fuel, passion is energy, desire is movement. A life without movement is already dead. You may feel calm, yes, but that calm is lifeless. It is not peace. It is the absence of disturbance because there is nothing left inside to disturb. The sages who truly mastered detachment did not detach from action. They detached from outcomes. They did not stop building. They simply stopped being owned by the results of what they built. They did not stop striving. They simply stopped striving for validation. They remained engaged in the world but not enslaved by it. They acted with precision, influence, and unwavering presence. Their detachment made them powerful, not passive. But most people interpret detachment as withdrawal. They stop reaching, they stop engaging, they stop trying. They tell themselves it is spiritual growth. But in truth, it is emotional retreat. They call it peace. But in truth, it is exhaustion disguised as enlightenment. They say they are above ambition, but in truth they are afraid of losing. And so, motivation fades, not because the person has evolved, but because they have stopped wanting. When you stop wanting, you stop moving. When you stop moving, life stops responding. And when life stops responding, you begin to feel invisible, irrelevant, disconnected not from desire, but from existence itself. This is the quiet tragedy of misunderstood detachment. A soft erosion of the will that once made you feel vividly, fiercely alive. There is a great inner conflict that begins the moment a person steps onto the path of spiritual awakening. It is the conflict between the ego and the idea of enlightenment. For all your life, your identity, your accomplishments, your ambitions, your dreams, even your wounds, have been shaped by the ego. The ego is the architect of your sense of self. It is the force that whispers, I must be more, I must become, I must rise above others. Without the ego, there is no desire to conquer, no hunger to achieve, no drive to push through hardship. But when you awaken spiritually, teachings begin to tell you that the ego is the enemy. That to be at peace, you must let go of the them. That the self is an illusion. That ambition, pride, desire are chains that keep you in suffering. And so you begin to dismantle the very thing that once fueled your rise. You begin to wage a war against your inner fire. You become suspicious of your own hunger, ashamed of your own strength, doubtful of your own will. You start to believe that to want anything deeply is a sign of immaturity, of attachment, of spiritual ignorance. And this is where the internal collapse begins. The ego is not your enemy. The ego is your engine. It is the force that says, I exist, and I will shape my existence. Without it, you become directionless. A being without identity is a being without trajectory. You may feel free for a moment, but freedom without direction is emptiness. When you tear down your ego without building something stronger to replace it, you are left with a hollowed-out version of yourself. Your ambition fades, your passion fades, your voice fades. You become soft not by choice, but by collapse. Imagine a king who decides that the responsibilities of rulership are too heavy, so he lays down the crown, believing that the removal of duty will bring peace. And yes, first he feels relief. No more decisions, no more Confawars. But slowly, the kingdom he once governed begins to fall into chaos. The people suffer, the structure dissolves. The crown he abandoned does not simply disappear. Someone else takes it. This is how the ego works. If you abandon your ambition, the world does not become peaceful. You simply lose your place within it. Spiritual teachings that speak of dissolving the ego were never meant for the everyday person. They were meant for the ascetic, the monk, the one who walks away from society entirely. But you do not live in the mountains. You live in the marketplace of the world. You live among ambition, competition, desire, and power. If you dissolve your ego while living in the world, you do not transcend life, you fall beneath it. The ego and enlightenment were never meant to be enemies. They are meant to be balanced. The ego provides direction. Enlightenment provides clarity. The ego says, I want to build. Enlightenment says, do not be enslaved by what you build. The ego moves the body. Enlightenment steadies the hand. Together, they create a human who is powerful yet conscious, driven yet not desperate, ambitious yet not empty. But most people, upon awakening, go to war with their own ambition. They believe they must extinguish desire to attain peace. Yet peace without desire becomes stillness. And stillness, when it ceases to be a moment of rest and instead becomes a lifestyle, leads to stagnation, and stagnation leads to decay. The truth is that your ego is not a villain. It is a child, undisciplined, emotional, hungry, and loud. But with guidance, that child becomes a warrior, a strategist, a leader. The answer was never to kill the ego. The answer was to mature it, to sharpen it, to teach it discipline. When the ego grows, it becomes a force of nature. When it is destroyed, the fire inside you dies. Many look at monks and sages and think they have no ego. They are free. But even they have strong identity, the identity of the one who masters the self, the one who stands firm in consciousness, the one who has chosen a purpose so vast that all lesser desires fall silent. That is not the absence of ego. That is ego in its most refined state, aligned, purified, and unwavering. But in your case, when you awakened, you did not refine your ego. You tried to erase it, and so your motivation disappeared with it. Because motivation is not born from the soul. Motivation is born from the self. And when the self dissolves, the will dissolves alongside it. There is a phrase often repeated in spiritual circles. When you align with your true self, everything will flow effortlessly. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? The idea that once you awaken, once you discover your inner truth, life will simply unfold. Opportunities will come. Success will find you. Without force, without struggle, without the sometimes brutal push that achievement demands. This idea comforts the tired, the overwhelmed, the wounded. It tells them they no longer need to fight, that simply existing in peace is enough. And so many, after awakening, abandon effort entirely. They wait for destiny to reveal itself. They wait for clarity to strike like lightning. They wait for life to deliver what they once worked to obtain. And while they wait, life moves on. The world does not reward the one who waits. It rewards the one who acts. The belief that awakening removes the need for effort is one of the most seductive illusions of the spiritual path. It tells you that fulfillment will arrive without sacrifice, that purpose will appear without searching, that accomplishment will grow without watering the ground. But human history, no philosophy, even the silent law that governs existence, speaks otherwise. Growth requires tension, motion requires effort, creation requires force. Even the seed must break itself open in darkness before it becomes a tree. When people awaken spiritually, they often confuse internal peace with external completion. They believe that because they feel calm inside, their work in the world is finished. But calm is not completion. Calm is preparation. It is the reset, the clearing of chaos, the sharpening of the blade. But a sharpened blade is useless if it never cuts. If awareness does not lead to action, it becomes stagnation. If enlightenment does not lead to influence, it becomes isolation. Peace without purpose is simply another form of sleep. The world you live in is shaped by those who take action. Those who decide, those who commit, those who push. The artist who paints, the warrior who trains, the thinker who writes, the ruler who governs, the mystic who returns from the mountain and uses his insight to reshape society. Spirituality was never meant to remove you from the world. It was meant to strengthen your ability to move through it with clarity. But many use spirituality as an escape from responsibility. They say they are surrendering to the universe, when in truth, they are avoiding the discomfort of effort. There is no path to mastery that does not require struggle. There is no growth without pain. There is no transformation without friction. You cannot become wise without being tested. You cannot become strong without being challenged. And you cannot create anything meaningful without discipline. Even the enlightened must labor. Even the awakened must choose. Even the free must act. The belief that fulfillment requires no work is not spirituality. It is laziness wrapped in poetic language, a form of self-deception, a soft lie told to avoid the sharp edge of responsibility. The universe does not reward intention alone. It rewards execution. Desire means nothing without movement. You have seen this in your own life. Before your awakening, you had goals. You had vision. You had hunger. You may have felt restless, even tormented, but that restlessness fueled you. It pushed you to grow, to learn, to create, to become. After awakening, you may have felt that hunger fade. You told yourself you no longer needed to prove anything, but the point was never to prove something to others. The point was to continue becoming. The game was never between you and the world. It was always between you and who you are capable of being. Fulfillment is not effortless. Fulfillment is earned. Through consistent alignment between what you know and what you do, awakening shows you the mountain. Ambition climbs it. Insight reveals your purpose. Discipline fulfills it. Peace clears your mind. Effort shapes your life. There is a moment in every awakened person's journey when they must choose. Will I remain in internal stillness and let life pass me by, or will I return to the world and create with clarity rather than desperation? Will I act with intention rather than fear? Will I build instead of drift? Will I shape reality rather than watch it from a distance? Spiritual awakening is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of conscious creation, the removal of illusions, not the removal of ambition, the awakening of clarity, not the death of desire, the discovery of inner power, not the abandonment of outer action. Peace is not the destination. Peace is the foundation from which you rise again, stronger, more focused, more deliberate, more alive in the end. The purpose of awakening was never to tame you into silence, nor to drain you of your fire. It was to show you who you are beneath the noise, and then to hand you back your power with clearer sight. Your motivation did not die because enlightenment is the death of desire. It died because somewhere along the way, you mistook stillness for surrender, peace for passivity, and awareness for withdrawal. But awakening was not meant to make you smaller. It was meant to make you precise, to remove the false ambitions fueled by fear and reveal the ambitions that are born from truth. Your hunger is not your enemy. Your ego is not your enemy. Your desire to build, to expand, to create, to influence. These are not signs of being spiritually lost. They are signs you are alive. What changes after awakening is not whether you strive, but why you strive. You no longer chase validation or applause. You no longer move out of insecurity or emptiness. You act because you are called, not because you are compelled. You build because your spirit demands expression, not because the world demands proof. So rise again, not as who you once were, but as who you were meant to become. Let your peace be your center, not your cage. Let your awareness sharpen your direction, not erase it. Let your ego be the sword, and your consciousness be the hand that guides its edge. You do not need to choose between enlightenment and ambition. The truly awakened are not the ones who abandon life, but the ones who return to it, unshaken, intentional, and unstoppable.